Panhandle, as well as moved through southwest Georgia last night, and continues to push its way through South Carolina and North Carolina as we speak. So the event is still ongoing. For citizens in North Carolina and South Carolina, please make sure you're listening to all the local warnings that are pushing forward. Obviously, with FEMA right now, our focus is search and rescue, getting access to the areas that have been hardest hit, and search and rescue. So we are working with not only the National Guards, the states of Florida, and the local first responders, but also our partners at the Coast Guard to do everything that we can to help those that are in need and to get through all the damage. And we do that methodically and try to make sure that we leave no stones unturned there. We were able to get some search and rescue crews in late last night. Obviously, nightfall limits what we can do there. So today is a big day for us when it comes to truly helping people and trying to prevent further loss of life as a result of what the Gulf Coast has been through. Obtaining access, obviously once we do all the life safety and life sustainment, work and try to stabilize the life safety effort, what we try to work on next is simultaneously getting the critical lifelines of communications, transportation, health and medical, and power back up and running as quickly as we can. The power's not going to be on for a while for obvious reasons. One, you got to get into the areas, you got to survey the roadway networks, make sure that you clear debris off the roadway networks. But anytime you have a significant storm surge event like this, roadways and bridges are greatly impacted. We have to survey and assess those before you can get power crews in. But we have tens of thousands. The last number I saw was over 30,000 private power crews staged in various places, ready to mobilize in from various states around the United States. So we will try to get them in as quickly as we can to help the private power companies get the power back on and do everything on our part to get them access and push back in. So when it comes to the health and medical, the health and medical critical lifeline took a hit too. Several hospitals were impacted. Federal forces assisted with life-saving evacuations out of multiple hospitals and continue to assess the damages down there. Obviously, we will do everything that we can to set up triage centers in those areas where hospitals are out of commission, and we will work with our partners at HHS to stay on top of that, as well as the governor and his staff as well. So we continue to focus on that area. And then once that happens, the goal is to get the private sector back in. Private sector and getting things back up and running and getting routine pushing forward. But that's a conversation for a later day right now. Right now, the focus is truly on life safety and making sure that we are helping people who may be trapped and pushing through and doing damage assessments to make sure that we fully understand where we need to coordinate our response efforts. Great communication. Spoke with the president, briefed the president last night on Air Force from Air Force One last night. He remains engaged. We processed another declaration request from the state of Georgia. I've personally spoken with Governor Scott as well as Governor Deal this morning to make sure that there were no shortfalls on our end to help them with everything. But again, let's reiterate that this system is ongoing. It's still impacting South Carolina and North Carolina. And we ask citizens to remain vigilant, make sure that they understand all the warnings that are in place, and take this storm seriously as we push forward. So with that, I'm going to push it over to Ken Wedeleski from NOAA, our partners over at NOAA. So Ken, for an update.
Okay, thank you very much. We're looking at now Tropical Storm Michael. It is moving across South Carolina. They will continue to rapidly move to the northeast today across North Carolina. This will spread heavy rainfall across those areas that were impacted due by Hurricane Florence several weeks ago. So we are looking at widespread moderate to locally major river flooding to once again resurface over North Carolina, likely beginning today, continuing for the next several days. Fortunately, the system is moving rather quickly, so it'll be off the coast tomorrow, so we don't expect this flooding to hang around as long as it did during Florence. In addition, we're looking at an enhanced risk for tornadoes today across the Carolinas along the track of Michael. Some of these tornadoes could be strong. That's something to watch out for. And there will be gusty winds and rough surf and beach erosion along the Carolinas today as well. Fortunately, we're looking at improving conditions. High pressure builds in for response and recovery efforts along the Gulf Coast through the weekend. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ken. Next, tremendous partner, that's heavily involved is U.S. Northern Command. So we have General O'Shaughnessy here with us today as well. General.
Thank you, Administrator Long. And this just being here with FEMA and with the team here as part of the National Response Framework, I think highlights the close working relationship we have and how that allows us to bring to bear the full capability of the Department of Defense and bring it and have it postured in order to be able to respond to both the state and the federal response. I'd like to highlight the fact that this close cooperation has allowed us to anticipate the needs for this storm, which are quite different than we've seen for example, in Florence. And all the way down from the state and the federal response level, we are now prepared and postured and quite literally surrounding the storm again with military capability that can come to bear when needed. I would like to highlight as well the National Guard has been phenomenal in this response, both in Florida, Georgia, and then in North Carolina and South Carolina postured. Their response in working directly for the governor is able to bring immediately that capability from the Department of Defense and have it immediately available in the response. And I'd highlight the great work that they've done. Right now we have about 5,000 Department of Defense personnel actively engaged within this effort. About half of that is from the National Guard, and again working directly for the governors to support the governor's needs and requirements. The key focus that we've been on is the search and rescue, the high water capability, the ability to bring vertical lift or helicopters to bring to bear, as well as additional support for power and other support assets that we'll need, and able to use some of our installations to provide that capability to launch the support efforts from. Thank you very much, Administrator Long, for the close cooperation and for the great work of your whole FEMA team.
Yeah, we're very thankful for DOD. Next, to help us stabilize the health and medical critical lifeline, Health and Human Services plays the lead role in that. So, Dr. Kevin Yeske.
Thank you. HHS is working closely with state health authorities and private sector partners from hospitals and other healthcare facilities. They are assessing the damage and determining the medical and public health needs, and HHS is ready to provide whatever support they may need to save lives and protect the health. The HHS Secretary has declared a public health emergency in Florida, and this declaration gives beneficiaries of Medicare and Medicaid services and their healthcare providers flexibility in meeting their emergency health needs. To assist state and local officials in life-saving efforts for medically vulnerable populations, we provided health officials with information on Medicare beneficiaries who rely on dialysis or special medical equipment such as home ventilators in the potentially impacted areas. And without power, these people can experience life-threatening events within hours of loss of power. Given the magnitude of the storm and the damage done, we're concerned about the healthcare system and the health of people impacted. By the end of the day, we will have moved approximately 400 medical and public health responders into the affected areas, with another 300 on alert. These responders come from the National Disaster Medical System and the U.S. Public Health Service. Today, some of our medical providers will begin working with the FEMA urban search and rescue teams to triage people who are rescued in the search and rescue process. Other medical personnel will be performing medical care at overwhelmed or damaged medical facilities and hospitals in the impacted area. HHS is also standing by ready to support in other aspects, including providing basic medical care at shelters and assisting public health departments with disease surveillance. We do have one message that we'd like to send out that you could help with, and that's the use of generators and gas-powered equipment in the risk of carbon monoxide exposure and poisoning. We want to recommend that people don't use their generators within 20 feet of their house. They don't keep their generators in their house, and they don't use gas-powered equipment within their houses once they get back to their homes. And that is pending the approval of the local health and emergency manager officials. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Next, as I said, search and rescue is ongoing. Our job is to backfill the capabilities of the state and local level, and the United States Coast Guard plays a huge role in helping us to do that. So Captain Benson's going to give a brief out once again from Coast Guard.
Good morning, everyone. Well, as the administrator and the general already mentioned, the search and rescue and life safety are paramount goals going forth today and in the coming days, and the Coast Guard is very much a key player in that. Simultaneous events will be unfolding in addition to search and rescue and the life safety missions, will also be evaluations of the waterways and the ports on the panhandle of Florida. And this work will also involve our key players of the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as NOAA and our state, local, and other agency partners. So in the event, in the aftermath of the hurricane, the Coast Guard has brought the full forces of the Coast Guard to bear with shallow water rescue boats, helicopters, cutters, aids to navigation boats, specialized teams. Everybody is there and ready to roll in and respond. The next few hours, obviously, as we've just had daylight a few hours ago, will reveal further information as to the impact and what that will dictate for the rescue operations and recovery efforts going forward. Elsewhere, Coast Guard crews and assets are positioned, ready to respond, as the remnants of the hurricane, as already mentioned, are still moving through Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. The ports of Pensacola, Panama City, and Cedar Key remain closed, and the ports of South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina are open with restrictions at this time. And that's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Captain. So next, the major player that helps us with emergency power and temporary power, overcoming emergency power and temporary power, is the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as assessing the damage to the infrastructure. So we have Mr. Ray Alexander with the Army Corps of Engineers.
Thank you, Administrator Long. Good morning. I would characterize today as one of movement of personnel and equipment to the impacted area, conducting assessments of our waterways, infrastructure, power needs, debris requirements, roofing, etc. And then finally, water management, if needed, at the various reservoirs and levees that are in the watersheds in the path of this storm. South Atlantic Division, headquartered in Atlanta, has the lead for our response. Brigadier General Diana Holland is the commanding general. She was in Atlanta yesterday at FEMA Region 4. Today she's en route to Mobile, Alabama, and will remain in the impacted area over the next several days conducting her own assessments. She has 5 district commanders, colonels, who will also be out meeting with key stakeholders and visiting their projects and supporting the response effort. We also have key leaders, subject matter experts, liaison officers at all the state emergency operations centers and key local and critical nodes throughout the impacted states. As far as dam and levee safety, currently our assessment is there has not been any significant impact on any of our dams or levee systems, but that assessment is ongoing. Right now we do not anticipate any deviations in the release from our reservoirs. Temporary power, we do have one mission for Florida. A second one is being worked currently for Georgia. We have a power team in Florida. We have an initial push of FEMA generators at Maxwell Air Force Base. Defense Logistics Agency will be delivering 2 other pushes in the coming days. I believe those generators will be further sent down to Albany, Georgia, and Eglin, Florida, to cut down the time to deliver and install those. Navigation, we're in full support. The Coast Guard and NOAA, our survey vessels, are standing by as soon as the waters are safe. We will be working with them. Debris, we have subject matter experts on the ground. They'll be doing an assessment of debris requirements. Focus will be initially on route clearance. Roofing, subject matter expert will be assessing what the potential requirements for that might be. Same with water, wastewater. We'll be working hand in hand with EPA. We'll have subject matter experts. Over the next 24 hours, the assessments of the waterways, power, debris, roofing, the impacts of all will continue, and then we'll start looking harder at potential needs for temporary housing, other infrastructure assessments, critical public facilities. And lastly, the Corps remains fully synchronized with the Department of Defense, Department of the Army's response efforts. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ray. Next up, our partners with the American Red Cross. They play a vital role and lead role in helping us to overcome the food, water, and shelter critical lifeline to stabilize, life sustainment issues that we're facing here as a result of people being displaced. Peter Macias. Yep.
Thanks, sir. How are you this morning? So last night, across 3 states, Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, we had approximately 7,800 people who were sheltered in 100 facilities. And we're continuing to help and take care of those folks. As the sun comes up and we take a look at the damage, we know there are a number of people who will not be able to go back to their home. To that end, the American Red Cross is prepared and has pre-positioned shelter supplies, cots, blankets, and now moving in people into the area to help support and augment the Red Cross volunteers who are already there. And we're also prepared to work with our agencies to prepare tens of thousands and deliver tens of thousands of meals a day to those folks who've been impacted. Thanks, sir.
Thanks, Administrator.
Buenos días, Daniel Yarguez de FEMA. La tormenta tropical Michael todavía es muy peligrosa para muchas partes de Florida, ya que pasó, pero todavía dejó muchos estragos. Entonces, continuamos nosotros vigilando la tormenta tropical Michael también a su paso por Georgia, por Carolina del Norte y Carolina del Sur. Y le pedimos a todos que tengan mucha precaución y mucho cuidado, ya que los caminos pueden estar bloqueados. Una de nuestras tareas y nuestras metas para Florida es empezar a limpiar estos caminos para poder entrar a comunidades que fueron impactadas. Y le pedimos a todas las personas que se mantengan fuera de los caminos, ya que pueden ser muy peligrosos todavía, aunque ya pasó la tormenta, y aquellos que están en la trayectoria de la tormenta, como en Georgia, Carolina del Norte, Carolina del Sur, que se mantengan también al tanto de lo que está pasando. También nuestra meta es estabilizar los servicios médicos, también los servicios de comunicaciones y la electricidad. Hay más de 30,000 equipos ya trabajando en esa área del país, en Florida, para poder restablecer los servicios eléctricos, pero les pedimos a las personas que tengan paciencia porque puede tardarse un poco esta tarea, ya que fue una tormenta devastadora. Hubo hospitales dañados también. Estamos trabajando como en el Departamento de Salud y Servicios Sociales, HHS, son uno de nuestros socios, para poder restablecer servicios y poder ver cuáles son las necesidades para poder operar y brindarle servicio a las personas que fueron afectadas. Nuestra labor principal también es salvar vidas. Es bien importante que podamos hacer esta tarea de salvar vidas. Empezamos con equipos de búsqueda y rescate ayer por la noche. Hoy, ya que salió el sol y que tenemos luz del día, vamos a continuar esas tareas de búsqueda y rescate. Y por último, el administrador Long platicó ayer con el presidente, le dio una actualización de lo que está pasando. Tenemos el apoyo de él 100% y también está en contacto con los gobernadores de los estados afectados como Florida, Georgia y Alabama para ver cuáles son las necesidades y con los equipos que tenemos desplazados ahí. Gracias.
All right. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you, sir.
All right, with that, we'll open up for questions. Yes, ma'am.
With ABC News, is there still the concern that not enough people evacuated? And also, you mentioned the hospitals. There are several that are right there on the coast. Were they able to get out in time? You mentioned you're going to have medical personnel nearby.
So when it comes to the general population, we'll see. I think Mexico Beach took the brunt. That's probably ground zero. It's hard to say. We haven't been able to get in and truly, assess. It's going to take us some time to do that over the next 48 hours. To fully understand who did and who didn't evacuate. But it's really too early to tell at this point. In regards to hospitals, the last thing you want to do is try to evacuate a hospital. When you evacuate hospitals, people's lives are put into jeopardy, particularly with sensitive patients like ICU patients and different things. So the goal is to try to get them to shelter in place. But in this case, they start to experience damage, and the hospital needs to move its patients out to make sure that we stabilize the standard of care, and that's what we've been working with. We've helped the state and local governments and stayed on top of moving patients out of hospitals that have been damaged, and we'll continue to push forward. And right now, we don't have an idea of how long those hospitals are out of commission. We hope to have a better sense of that by close of business today. One thing to point out, though, when it comes to the health and medical and the evacuations, when it comes to private assisted care facilities and different things, it's really their responsibility to have evacuation plans and contracts in place. Many states have laws that dictate those plans and should be regulated and put forward. If those plans fail, then often we're called in to try to help. But we didn't get too many calls. Last-minute calls to help assisted living facilities, last night or the day before to do so. But we do know that a lot of medical facilities sustained damage, in the impacted areas where the storm made landfall. Next question. Anything else?
You said it's going to be a long, Kyle Madura, Great Television. You said it's going to be a long time before power's back. Can you put even if it's a ballpark figure or more of a time frame on that?
Well, here again, we're at the mercy of our private power partners. The Gulf Powers, the Florida Power and Lights, the Southern companies in Georgia to do that. We take their time frame. What our job is to help the local and state governments to get the first push debris open, get the roadways open so that the power trucks can come in. But obviously, everybody's seen from the TVs, it's not just power lines being down, it's transformers that are down, it's substations that have been impacted, and this is not stuff that you just put back together overnight, and it's unrealistic for people to think that it's going to happen within the next day or two in some of these areas. What I am encouraged about is that it's about I think the total power outages are somewhere between 500,000 and 600,000 people. We were actually estimating about twice, if not three times that amount, being out as a result of the system. So, that is some good news. But for that 500,000 people that don't have power, we understand the frustration. We're doing everything we can, but it could be multiple weeks in some of those areas. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Samantha Duroth, Spectrum News. Wondering if you guys have a plan as to what parts you're visiting and surveying, is there a plan for when you're going to Mexico Beach?
They're there. We have teams that are pushing in, trying to get into all areas. It's not just Mexico Beach. It's Southwest, large portions of Southwest Georgia and those rural counties, in there. So we're mobilizing to try to get in and handle as much of it simultaneously as possible. As far as me going downrange, my job is to make sure that we're doing everything from this point, for those governors that we can do. And then I hope to, I'm anxious to get out in the field just like the president is. I hope to be downrange Saturday, Sunday sometime. But my job right now is to make sure that we're doing everything we can to, make sure that we're not, we're overcoming any shortfalls identified by our state partners. Yeah.
Good morning, Greg Wallace at CNN. Have you identified at this point any issues with hazardous materials like oil in the Gulf or wastewater plants? And then also, do you have any information on any issues to areas impacted by Florence, what they'll be seeing?
Yeah, so in regards to the, hazardous waste, hazardous materials is one of our critical lifelines. That's something that we use. Our partners at the EPA, the Coast Guard, help us to really assess. It's a little early yet. For me to say, hey, right now, initially, we don't have any really massive problems with hazardous waste. It could be a little premature. We've got to spend the next 24, 48 hours to making sure that we understand fully the impacts. And, once those are uncovered, then we'll do what we can to help our partners overcome them. And then the second part of your question with Florence, the people in North and South Carolina have been through it, and this isn't going to help. We are encouraged, working with our partners at the Army Corps of Engineers. They do a tremendous job on water management. Right now, because of the forward speed of the system, anytime that forward speed, and it's moving pretty quickly, that typically means less rainfall. But, some of the forecasts were isolated amounts of 9 inches in some areas in North Carolina, and it's tough for the riverine basins right now to handle that volume of water. But right now, the encouraging news is we're not anticipating any additional flooding over what's already occurred in Florence, but I know that those who are recovering would like this to get out, get out of their way so they can continue with the recovery. The problem is you're about to see storm surge of 2 to 4 feet again in some of those western Pamlico Sound and the coastal counties as the storm pushes out as well. So here again, it's not over. So folks, particularly in coastal North Carolina, need to be careful today. 2 to 4 feet in some of those low-lying areas can cause loss of life and damage. Yeah. All right, folks, any more questions? All right. Thank you. Thanks, folks. This way.
We do anticipate a 3:30 p.m. telephonic update with what we've learned so far today. And with any questions in the meantime, please feel free to email the FEMA News Desk at FEMA-news-desk@fema.dhs.gov. Thank you.